Greetings, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at. It's good to see you all. This is a new show. We're not getting rid of the old show. We're just expanding our reach. So, in collaboration with our wonderful DD Geopolitics, I now have my own show here. So we'll have the main show that you love with Sarah and me, and then we'll also do this show much more frequently. Hopefully, at least 4 or 5 times a week. So it's great to see you all. It's great to be with you all. This is my first solo stream ever, and I'm so happy to do it with you all. So it's a real pleasure. There's a lot to get into. I'm sure all of you are inundated with information, with news, with so much going on. First and foremost, I want this to be an opportunity where you all can ask questions. You all can reach out. I'll try to do my best to keep in sync with all of your questions, with all of the things that you might ask. And hopefully at some point, I'd like to do a call-in show where we can actually talk live one-on-one or with a group of you that can come on. And I think that would be great as well, because as a teacher by training, I think it's fantastic to have input and to be able to collaborate in that way. We learn all much, much better, and we have a clear understanding of the world around us. Now, let's get into it. First, I know that some people were asking in the chat. I'm feeling a bit better. This injury is pretty tough to deal with, but I have my leg elevated now with my boot on, so we'll be okay for a little while here. So thank you again so much for all the outpouring of love and support and care. I really appreciate it. To those in the chat who have family in Iran, of course, I send my love and my solidarity, my best wishes and warmest regards to you all at this most difficult time for those of us who are Iranian, who have Iranian family that are living under the bombardment by the Epstein regime. So I hope that we can be victorious, that we can end this once and for all, and that we can put an end to this aggression that we've seen by the Zionists and the US, what we have collectively called the Epstein Coalition. So also, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the button and the bell and all that good stuff on all the channels, especially the 2 on YouTube. So I have my own channel and also the DD Geopolitics one. We want to grow them all together. And hopefully we can convince Sarah to get her own channel. So we will see about that, hopefully. All right, let's get into it. So I am going to screen share because we have a lot to get into here. And let's see where we're at here. So let me just come over here. Hold on 1 second. And all right, let's screen share that one. All right, so we start with this important image. So this is coming out of the holy city of Qom, which is the spiritual capital of Iran. It is the place where the seminary is located, the Qom seminary, which is one of the most important. The others, of course, that are important are in Najaf, in Iraq. And these are the sites that are holy in Shia Islam and that have spiritual authority going back centuries. So you can see there in the image, you see, of course, in the center with his banner raised above, martyr, supreme leader, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and you see him flanked by Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah with the former president, Raisi, and then you see General Soleimani, you see Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis as well, and many of the other generals of the Iranian military. So already remember, we're in a 40-day mourning period now. This is a long period for mourning and for commemoration, for really a solemn reflection of the life of the supreme leader, who's a marja, which is the highest cleric, the highest spiritual authority in Shia Islam. So you have only a few of those in existence right now. You have, of course, the dear departed martyr Sayyid Ali Khamenei was a marja. You have Sistani in Iraq. You have other leaders as well, but there are not so many as you might think. And every Shia Muslim has their marja. They look up to someone for their spiritual authority. Much like, for example, Orthodox Christians will look to a patriarch in a certain patriarchate, or to an archbishop in a certain autocephalous jurisdiction for their episcopal leadership and for their episcopal guidance. So we move now here. Let's go to the next image I'd like to throw up here for all of you. Let me see if I can do this here. So here we go. So we're going to share this, of course, and we're going to play it. But one thing I want to note here, I made a tweet about it. One thing I want to note is that the White House has been going overdrive in its portrayal of what has transpired in these 8 days of war, in sort of a very in a way that has a lot of hubris and cockiness and machismo and, sort of jingoism, something we haven't seen really, that I haven't seen since 2003 and the invasion of Iraq, the second Persian Gulf War. But let's watch this together, and then we can sort of break it down. I'd like to go into some things with you all.
Wake up, Daddy son.
Welcome home, son.
Strength and honor. Strength and honor.
What will you do without freedom?
Mavericks inbound.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of. Finishing this fight. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
I am the danger. Time to find out. Maximum effort. Finish it. Here it comes. Now end this. Flawless victory.
So one thing that I think is very important. Close this out. One thing that I think is very important for all of us to understand is that what we see in Hollywood is an extension of U.S. ideology, especially the ruling ideology. So when we think about soft power, when we think about propaganda, Hollywood is at the forefront. It's the spear. It's a tip of propaganda insertion around the world. So everyone has seen, for example, American movies. Everyone has seen American TV shows. Everyone listens to American music. Everyone consumes American culture. And that was one of the things, for example, at the collapse of the Soviet Union, everybody wanted rock and roll and blue jeans and Pizza Hut. And they destroyed a civilization, a newer civilization, Homo Sovieticus, to get that. And so when we think about something as benign as some of the movies or clips or things that we see in there, they all have a message behind that. And that's one thing that all of you over time should begin to unpack and begin to unwind. What is the messaging behind, for example, the things that we see around us, the propaganda that we consume daily, whether it's advertisements, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, whether it's billboards and advertisements. All of you know, for example, the classic scene in They Live, where the main character puts on the glasses and all of a sudden can see the reality. And that's the piercing of ideology. That's looking beyond the aesthetics and superficial level and entering into the realm of the ideological structure of what that is trying to portray. And only then can you really understand what is going on and what is trying to be conveyed, and what subliminal messaging is also trying to condition you for, whether it's to have this kind of jingoistic rally around the flag effect, whether it's to program you in a certain way around certain issues, be they social, cultural, economic, whatever it might be. But we know that this manufacturing is very much at the industrial level. People get PhDs, people spend their lives studying how to do this and how to do it effectively. So it's not only in the political realm where we see, for example, posters and art and high quality films for different socialist states or revolutionary states or empires, but it's also very much a part of the capitalist system and trying to promote it, project it, and the imperialist system and trying to promote and project these kinds of values. the market, freedom, human rights, whatever it might be, and quote unquote. But that's what's trying to be projected. So it was very interesting to see the White House do this, because it's not so often where you have an official government organ use pop culture in such a way where you can really see it in live time, what the ruling ideology is actually, because what they're doing is they're basically breaking apart all of these things that we know separately and combining them into a narrative that we already know exists at the fundamental level, but now they're making it very explicit and open. And I thought that was very interesting and something quite unique, I think, in this whole fiasco. Let's go here. Let's go here to the next thing I'd like to show you all. Let me just open this up. So we will, let me screen share here. All right, so I'm going to square it. Perfect. So here we are. So here's the map. Here's the map that was presented at the Department of Defense. This is the map that Pete Hegseth had, and you saw the generals have. So this is the situation right now in terms of the bombing campaign against Iran over basically the first, I think it was the first, if I'm not mistaken, just to make sure, the first 100 hours, it said. So that's where we're at. The interesting part about this, and I'm sure all of you are well aware and can understand and can discern, the interesting part is, where is the bombing concentrated? That's right. It's concentrated on the western part of the country. It's concentrated on the border areas and really only goes to Tehran and a little bit beyond Tehran. But as you can see, much of the country has not necessarily been affected. And that's when we have to critically examine what is the government saying when it says they've achieved air superiority. And now they've had to come out and condition that by saying we've achieved air superiority over Tehran and over some areas, but not over all the areas. So that's, I think, very, very interesting at this point. So clearly there hasn't been air superiority achieved in the larger sense, but there has been an effective bombing campaign, at least according to the Americans and the Zionists. There has been an effective bombing campaign that we are witnessing here. Clearly, you've seen that a lot of the bombing is also in the areas that we're going to talk about pretty soon, related to the Kurds. So we should also examine that and take a look at that and see what is happening with the Kurds. And I'd like to break it down with you all here. So we have this map. You can see also the regional partners, the regional states. And one important thing here, so Iran borders Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Iraq, right? And then on this side, it borders Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So Iran borders the second largest NATO army in Turkey, and Iran borders a nuclear state, Pakistan. So Iran is very, very well positioned in terms of the geopolitical great game that's come back to the region. Also, we should note that the Caspian Sea links Iran in the northern part with the southern part of Russia. So in a way, there's sort of a maritime, so to say, a sea border that exists between Russia and Iran. So you can clearly see in this neighborhood that Iran, as an enormous country, I mean, Iran's the size practically of Alaska. It's an enormous country, and it's very mountainous. So it's not so easy to achieve the objectives so quickly that the Americans and the Zionists were thinking that they could achieve so soon. And I think that that's very important to understand here. Now let's switch gears. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to address an article that just came out, which I thought is very, very interesting, and we should go through it together. Let me just make sure I can see it here. Here we go. So this article says, Intel report warns large-scale war unlikely to oust Iran's regime. Now, this just came out today, and I thought it was very, very interesting. Let's go through it together and kind of parse out what's being said here. So we have, and let me just minimize, I'll minimize my Can everybody hear me now? Everybody can hear me? Muted? Am I still muted? Okay. Is audio back? It's okay now? Okay, sorry. I didn't know that when we muted or when I minimized myself, the audio went away. Okay, good to know. So one of the interesting things is already we have classified reports and information leaking out of the administration that there is actually no possibility for them to achieve the main objectives that they had laid out. That's a real problem here. Real problem. Once again, we're in another conundrum like the other regime change wars that we faced. And that's why there's real fears. I was just on RT about an hour ago. There's real fears that this is going to turn into another endless war. The exact thing that Trump and Tulsi and so many other people campaigned against. So let's read here. A classified report by the National Intelligence Council found that even a large-scale assault on Iran launched by the United States would be unlikely to oust the Islamic Republic's entrenched military and clerical establishment. A sobering assessment as the Trump administration raises the specter of an extended military campaign that officials say has only just begun. Here we go. This is the language leading us to an extended military campaign. Not 1 week, not 2 weeks, not 6 months. This is turning into something much, much bigger. The findings, confirmed to the Washington Post by 3 people familiar with the report's contents, raised doubts about President Donald Trump's declared plan to clean out, quote unquote, Iran's leadership structure and install a ruler of his choosing. The report, completed about a week before the United States and Israel initiated the war on February 28th, outlined succession scenarios stemming from either a narrowly tailored campaign against Iran's leaders or a broader assault against its leadership and government institutions, the people familiar with its findings said. So this report was a week before they did this, and once again, probably didn't even go on the table. Nobody even consulted it. Who cares that these bureaucrats do these kinds of paperwork anyway, as long as they're pushing pencils and doing their work. That's all that matters. But at this point, we have now evidence that some people in the administration were saying, hey, look, this is not going to work out. In both cases, the intelligence concluded that Iran's clerical and military establishment would respond to the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei by following protocols designed to preserve continuity of power, these people said. That's very important because Iran is not like Iraq in the Ba'athist period or Afghanistan with the Taliban that had either weak institutions, like in Afghanistan, it was very weak in terms of structures of bureaucracy. And in Iraq, that bureaucracy had been eroded because of an 8-year war, then the Persian Gulf War, and a decade of sanctions. So it had already really suffered as a result of that. Also, not to mention the sectarianism within Iraq, given the fact that there were Shia majority, but were a minority of Sunnis were governing the country. Also, some Shias took part, but in any case, there was a popular dissent against Saddam Hussein's government. And also you had the Kurds in the north. So it was, wildly different scenario than in Iran, which is a civilizational state and a little bit different in terms of history and institutions. So let's continue here. The prospect of Iran's fragmented opposition taking control of the country was described as quote unquote unlikely, said the people who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a classified report. The National Intelligence Council, or NIC, is composed of veteran analysts who produce classified assessments meant to represent the collective wisdom of Washington's 18 intelligence agencies. The CIA referred questions to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which declined to comment. Interesting. The White House did not say if the president was briefed on this assessment before approving the military operation, which has quickly expanded east to include submarine warfare in the Indian Ocean and west to counter missile showdowns near NATO member Turkey and also in Cyprus. President Trump and the administration have clearly outlined their goals with regard to Operation Epstein Fury, destroy Iran's ballistic missiles and production capacity, demolish their navy, and their ability to arm proxies and prevent them from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. White House spokeswoman Anna Kelly said in a statement, the Iranian regime is absolutely crushed. So once again, how can they end the ability to arm proxies? And if they end the ability, quote unquote, to arm proxies, those proxies won't just disappear. Those proxies are states within themselves, basically. Hezbollah is basically a shadow state in Lebanon, And Ansar Allah is the government in Sana'a. It has institutions, it has a bureaucracy, it has a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a Ministry of Culture and a Ministry of Sports and a Ministry of Youth. How are these people planning on doing this, right? So this is very, very important to realize. Clearly, something else is going on, because there's no way that this makes any sense to me. So let's continue. U.S. spy agencies' doubts about Iran's opposition seizing power have been referenced in the New York Times, Reuters, and Wall Street Journal. The NIC's involvement and its analyses of the potential outcomes of small and large-scale offensives have not been previously reported. So this is breaking news in terms of the report. Suzanne Maloney, an Iran scholar and vice president of the Brookings Institution, said the NIC's prediction that Iran's institutions will endure stems from its rigorous knowledge of the Islamic Republic. It sounds like a deeply informed assessment of the Iranian system and the institutions and processes that have been established for many years, she said. It does not appear that the intelligence report examined other possible scenarios, including sending U.S. ground troops into Iran or arming the country's ethnic Kurds to foment a rebellion. It could not be determined whether the large-scale campaign that the classified document examined is identical to the operations now underway. Those two scenarios, ground troops, and arming the Kurds, are worst-case scenarios, because arming the Kurds, and I want to make this clear, many of you have seen my prediction online, arming the Kurds is a red line, and using the Kurds in combat is a red line for Turkey. Remember, Turkey last year entered into a peace agreement with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, a former Marxist-Leninist guerrilla organization that sought a Kurdish socialist state, and after the 1990s switched to a form of democratic confederalism and what's municipalism, what some people consider to be sort of a diet anarchism. In any case, the PKK has reached a tentative agreement with the Turkish government, and Öcalan was in negotiations with the Turkish government. Many of the PKK fighters laid down their arms last summer in a symbolic gesture. And then we have a situation in Syria in the northeast where Rojava was, now the revolution is basically gone. It's integrated fully into the Syrian state. So that's very important to understand as well. So if the Kurds get involved in Iran, you're going to see an escalation across the border, because Turkey does not want an independent Kurdish state, especially in Iran, which has the largest Kurdish city of Kermanshah, and also has deep connections and its own branch of the PKK that could then extend the struggle back into Turkey. And so it would see it as an existential threat to its own security and stability and social order within. So that's very important to understand at this point. That, alongside sending troops in, first of all, many of you have seen the map of Iran, the topographical map, right? This country is mountainous. I have no idea what they're thinking about in terms of sending troops in. Maybe they want to send airborne. That's why they've talked about the 82nd Airborne Division. Maybe they want to drop troops inside Iran. But this is not easy territory for them. Don't forget, U.S. troops took control of Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of in the initial days, and slowly over time, year after year, lost control of territory, and were unable to project their power beyond their forward operating bases and a few key cities that they held. They were able to do operations against the Taliban and against different insurgencies, whether it be Sunni insurgency, Shia insurgency, eventually the creation of Daesh, right, in Mosul. But it's important to note that at this point, there is no way that the United States can have these troops on the ground and maintain control of the whole country. It's not possible. The country, it would require 1 million soldiers. It would require way over what we had in Iraq. Iraq, in the initial buildup, had over 100,000 soldiers on the ground. And even then, Iraq is mostly flat except for the northern part, the mountainous areas in the Kurdistan regional area and on the border with Syria and Turkey. And even then, there was a huge difficulty. Imagine a country way bigger and more mountainous. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But of course, the U.S. Government is going to do what they do, as we know. And we're going to see the sparks fly, I think, pretty soon. Let's see here. So the Iranian succession process that the report anticipated is now playing out, but under duress from the extensive US-Israel bombing campaign from the air and sea. The replacement of the supreme leader rests with Iran's powerful clerical body, the Assembly of Experts, which, by the way, they were reports that they bombed it, but they were remote at the time. So it looks like nobody was killed, or at least we don't know. But they're planning within 24 hours to release the results. But members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and others within the country's security establishment also play an influential role. There has been intense speculation that the assembly will anoint the late supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, but no official announcement has been made. The IRGC has been pushing Khamenei's candidacy, but has encountered resistance from other power brokers, including Ali Larijani, the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, a Western security official said. As the war enters its second week, Trump continues to demand Iran's quote-unquote unconditional surrender, as he put it in a Truth Social post, and has suggested he should have a role in picking the country's next leader. Trump told journalists that the younger Khamenei is incompetent and a lightweight, and that he doesn't want Iranian leaders who will simply rebuild the country's nuclear and ballistic missile infrastructure. We want them to have a good leader. We have some people who I think would do a good job, he told NBC News. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, rejected the notion that Trump will play any role in appointing Iran's next leader. The fate of dear Iran, which is more precious than life, will be determined solely by the proud Iranian nation, not by Epstein's gang, Ghalibaf said on X, referring to the late sex offender who was close friends with Trump for several years before they had a falling out. Well, that's a nice way of saying that Trump is not implicated, but we all know, on this show, we all know that Trump is in the files, and big time. Current and former U.S. officials say they see little sign, at least so far, of a mass popular uprising in Iran or of significant fissures within the government or security forces that will result in a new regime. Iran's security forces killed thousands of protesters during demonstrations in January. According to this, they killed thousands. You see, they're not using tens of thousands, which is what the monarchists online, all of you have been seeing, these people who support Pahlavi or Mariam Rajavi or other liberals who are saying, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 100,000 people have been killed. They're just saying thousands because they know that that number is not real. The guidance from Trump to the Iranian people has been to shelter in place until the U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign concludes. With Iran's clerical and military establishment still in control, experts say Trump's ability to dictate political outcomes is limited. Bending the knee to Trump would go against everything they stand for, said Holly Dagras, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. The upper echelons of the clerical establishment are ideological, and so their modus operandi is to resist American imperialism. Trump could play kingmaker if the regime were to crumble, but the NIC report does not view the establishment's hold on power as brittle. There's no other force within Iran that can confront the remaining power that the regime has, said Maloney of the Brookings Institution. Even if they are not able to project that power very effectively against their neighbors, they can certainly dominate inside the country. So there you have it. I mean, all of you can see it's in black and white. The Western press is already saying it. I mean, this is the Washington Post. They're saying that this is not going to go the way that the Trump administration is saying. This gloating that we just saw earlier, this gloating and this hubris and this sort of jingoism that you're seeing, this triumphalism, we've dominated, we've taken over, everything's ours. No. In fact, you martyred a man who's now become immortalized. Now he's become a religious figure and a martyr and someone for people to follow and emulate. And additionally, you have now given the Iranian people an opportunity to unite, even those critical. There are many people who are critical of the economy, of certain issues that exist. There's been a loosening of certain restrictions socially, especially for women. But now you've united everyone because, listen, us Iranians, we can handle our stuff on our own. We don't need somebody to come from outside and dictate what's happening. But now the United States and the Zionist entity are imposing their will on the Iranian people. They're saying, we're going to change from without. Iranians have had this experience before. And trust me, a lot worse. When Hulagu Khan came, he butchered how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in Iran on his quest to Baghdad and then on to Damascus and all the way to near to Egypt, where he was finally defeated by the Mamluks and pushed back. So all that to say that Iran is not unaware, is unfamiliar with outside intervention and foreign armies, barbarians at the gate, so to speak. But if the Americans and the Zionists think that this will be easy and that somehow everyone's going to go to the so-called opposition, which we'll get to later on, they are sorely, sorely, sorely mistaken. So I just want everyone to know that. Let's now come to a very interesting video that I want to speak to you all about because I thought it was very, very unique. Let me just pull it up here. Okay, so let's share this screen here. All right. Everyone can see this, yeah? All right, let me just expand this a bit and... So that is very, very cool. So those are decoys, basically. Those are decoys, kind of blow up decoys that have been used traditionally in war. And people are making comments in the chat. They were totally used in World War II. And we're going to get into that. And I'd like to, for those of you who don't know, I was a former U.S. Army officer. And so in training and things like that, for those who were more interested to go in depth, I studied a lot of the counterinsurgency stuff. It was interesting. And then I was also commissioned an infantry officer. So it was necessary reading. So let me share this screen so we can look at an interesting article. This is from the War Room at the Army War College. And let's look at what they're saying about decoys. So this is from an article from 2020. A tool for deception, the urgent need for EM decoys, that's electromagnetic decoys. But let's go down here and read this paragraph here. The extent to which the US military has employed deception, particularly decoys, has varied over time, but is currently at a low after 2 decades of neglect in favor of capabilities for counterinsurgency. This has not always been the case. When facing capable adversaries with robust artillery or air forces, like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, American forces made more use of decoys. In the late 1980s, the US military employed tactical decoys for fighting vehicles like tanks. These inflatable decoys gave small units the ability to appear twice as large as they were in reality. A platoon of 4 tanks could appear to be 8, potentially scaring off a smaller enemy force or creating a diversion. The Army codified deception in white papers and doctrine. Unfortunately, even when such decoys were available, they were not used according to research by an Army officer at the time. Most units, and I quote, simply kept the decoy system sealed and stored in the supply room for the sake of hand receipt integrity. After decades of uncontested air dominance and counterinsurgency, tactical decoys are missing in action. Very, very interesting. Very interesting, because we don't know. Some people were saying it's fake, it's AI generated. In either case, decoys have been used, and there's a probability, I think a quite high probability, that decoys have also been used. There's been a lot of people commenting on social media, military analysts, and people like that, who've noticed that there have been decoys, whether it be planes, helicopters, drones, air defense, or ballistic missiles that have been used as decoys. Now, let's read, for example, one, we were talking there about the doctrine. Let's read from the doctrine handbook. This is FM 90, I believe, from 1988. And this is about decoys. So we'll read here. Let's see. Here. Time of exposure will have a great effect on how we plan visual deception. A low-level air attack has little time to determine if a tank decoy is real or false. Nevertheless, that same tank decoy would not likely fool infrared photo interpreters unless it contained an infrared generator to fool that sensor system. During the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, the Israelis found that simple visual decoys were sufficient to draw the fire of attacking enemy fighter aircraft. U.S. air defense, radar, and artillery assets are priority enemy targets and are vulnerable to air attack. For these reasons, these systems represent an excellent use of decoys. Decoys of various vehicles and equipment have been designed and used in the past. Designs have ranged from fold-ups, inflatables, and bolt-ons. Materials have included plastic, styrofoam, and fiberglass. It should be apparent that the level of sophistication of deception equipment and techniques have far surpassed the canvas and baling wire approach of decoys and dummies that were used in World War II. Ad hoc efforts to deceive the enemy simply won't work on today's battlefield. Our deception devices and techniques must be able to fool an array of sophisticated enemy sensor technology. Our deception efforts must be believable. They must be afforded the same secrecy and security as real items. After World War II, Allied pilots enjoyed telling the story of a decoy airstrip that the Germans were painstakingly constructing entirely of wood. They made wooden aircraft, hangars, fuel points, and gun emplacements. The Germans, however, were lax in their security and camouflage during construction, and Allied photo experts were able to identify the ruse. On the day after the construction was finally completed, a lone RAF bomber swung in low, circled the airfield once, and dropped one large wooden bomb. I find that absolutely hilarious. So there you have it. There you have it. There's a very, very interesting paper from it's the deception manual. So it's very, very interesting what's going on. There is a lot of deception in this ongoing war right now, and Iran has been able to deploy deceptive techniques as well. So I think that that's very interesting, and we should pay attention to that as well. So now let's come to another important topic. Let's go back now. Some of you were on our stream where we talked about Kurds. Let's again talk about Kurds once more and look into what's going on now, what the topic is now, like how things are developing, and also what Kurds are saying themselves. And we'll now go to the PUK leader, that's Talabani, who's out of Suleimania in the Kurdistan Regional Government of Northern Iraq. So let's take a look here. Let's share this, open this up.
President of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the PUK. Mr. Talabani, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's first start big picture and paint the picture from where you sit of what you see with this war in Iran and what you think the implications are of it as it exists now.
We saw the hostilities start surprisingly, and it seems to be a massive escalation across all fronts. Kurdistan has come under attack from several different angles, and I'm not seeing any sign of a slowdown. If anything, I'm seeing an escalation.
So the U.S. is working on taking out missile sites and drone factories and that sort of thing. But as far as groups on the ground fighting the Iranians, there's reporting that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for this operation. Where does that stand?
There are a lot of Iranian Kurds that deserve dignity, and they deserve perhaps better treatment. But as for any actual preparation and armed Kurds inside Iran, there are elements, and there's lots of political organization. But most of the most effective fighting forces are actually outside of Iran. They're on the borders here.
You had a conversation with President Trump. What was that like?
He was very charming. He was very kind. I could feel the emotion in his voice. He said that the Kurds were great fighters. My understanding is that the protection of their people in Iraq is paramount. He's very grateful for all the years that we have served and I have spent with your special forces.
You also talked to the Iranian foreign minister.
Yes.
What is their take on things from your call? Do you believe that regime change is possible the way it's heading right now?
The foreign minister, His Excellency, expressed great disappointment, if I'm honest with you. He indicated that as far as they were concerned, the talks were going well. He implied that a technical group was supposed to sit together in the upcoming days to discuss technical matters. He indicated that this wasn't a war that they were looking forward to, but it was a war they would have to fight. It's definitely existential to them. I got the impression that they were open to some form of peaceful negotiation, which realistically is the only real solution to this issue. Regime change at the moment doesn't look on the cards from what I see. We've seen no uprisings anywhere. We've seen nothing of that. But it's early days. I expect this operation to be long and very difficult.
You think there are difficult days ahead. The president is suggesting that he would only accept unconditional surrender, in his words to a reporter. So you don't see that right now, that this is on the cusp of happening?
I don't, sir. No, I don't see that right now. I think that the regime has been planning for this for 45 years, and you can expect a fierce resistance. The definition of regime change is important. What is the definition of regime change? And is there an off-ramp? Because some could argue that most mission parameters have been achieved. So is there an off-ramp where now perhaps we can try to resolve this diplomatically?
Yeah, I think that from the administration, at least listening to them, taking out the ballistic missile capability, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, was the original objective going in.
Exactly.
The Israelis clearly are more wanting specific regime change to get a different leader in place that the U.S. and Israel can work with.
I understand that. And I think that, Mr. Baer, the conditions, I keep hearing the comparisons to 2003. I think the conditions are very different to 2003. In 2003, there was legitimate, well-known, respected opposition to Saddam among the Shiites, among the Kurds, and don't really see that in Iran now. There isn't a standard, a symbol for people to follow, and that will make it very difficult. Troops on the ground with a country the size of Western Europe, I'm not sure if that's feasible either, but there are many options, and I think the US administration is wise enough to modify their position as the battle changes and as the battlefield changes.
Just to be clear, so there's no armed cross-border operation happening now from your territory in Iraq involving Iranian Kurds into Iran?
Not that I see, and you could argue that that's actually a detriment. Iranians, like everybody else, are very a nationalistic person, and I believe that if they fear that Kurds coming in from elsewhere will cause a split or a splintering of their country, this may actually unify the people and against this separatist movement. Then you have the complications of Turkey. Turkey will have legitimate concerns of this happening. You will have Turkish intervention against the Kurdish troops. At the same time, there is a problem with the Assyrians. I think it's a very complicated scenario, and perhaps Kurds being tip of the spear is not the way to go.
Yeah. There are many minorities, you're right, in Iran, and it's very complex as far as how it comes together. If you were to look into a crystal ball, how do you think this ends?
I think that Kurdistan needs to be a bridge, not a battlefield. And the Kurds are uniquely positioned as being your great allies and a partner and a neighbor of Iran. I think we're uniquely positioned to play a role in de-escalation when the time is appropriate, like my late father used to play that role. But what I see now, from what I'm seeing, is a weakened Iranian system, but the institutions, though very different to ours, are institutions and they remain solid. I think that once military objectives are achieved, I dare say that it will be the time for diplomacy. And at that time, we stand ready, as always, to stand with our friends and allies to try to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to this region that truly has suffered from far too many wars and far too many conflicts.
Dealing with the drone threat from Iran, because that's what we're seeing most in some of these Gulf countries.
Yes.
Are you worried about attacks and how to defend against those drone attacks that come in swarms?
Not to sound flippant, so it's not our first rodeo, and we have absolutely no defense against any drones. So I think the less time spent worrying about it, the better. Yeah,
I got you. And the U.S. is attempting to deal with all of those threats together. It's very interesting to hear your perspective. If you were to say the thing you're most worried about, what is it?
The humanitarian crisis. I think the people of the Middle East have suffered enough, and I urge all sides to try to look at a less bloody way to resolve our issues. I understand that, and I do believe, I genuinely believe that Mr. Trump in his heart wants peace. And I understand the theory of peace through strength. And I also think that when the day comes to acknowledge victory, there will be grace in that victory. And we may be able to have dialogue, and we may be able to resolve this issue through the only way that will make a long-lasting peace. And that's dialogue, stability, peace.
Yeah. Well, fascinating to talk to you from the region. Bafel Talabani, the head of the PUK. Thanks for the time.
My pleasure.
So very, very, very interesting. And I see some of you in the chat as I was watching while you were going, very astute observations. Not only the boring aspect and, Epstein News Network and, kind of just monotonous word salad of this, but if you look in more closely, some of you rightfully understood what was going on. Number one, Talabani's area of Iraq is Suleimania region. It borders Iran. His father, which I will show you a picture now, because now is a good opportunity to do some great, hold on. Let's see if I can find it here. Yes. All right, so this is a very, very, very interesting picture that I put on X 6 years ago in 2020 when I found it. But this is a picture of Talabani. So for all, actually, let me put my cursor over here. And I don't know, can you see my cursor? Maybe, let me see. Hold on, I have to adjust all these screens on my small computer here. Can you see? No, can't see the cursor. Okay, never mind. So the guy with the suit is that guy's father. That's Talabani. That's the elder Talabani. He was the leader of the PUK. He was the leader of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, which was founded by a lot of people who were involved in the Republic of Mahabad. Republic of Mahabad, as some of you know who listened to our stream, was the only ever Kurdish state to exist. It was a de facto Soviet state, like satellite state, and it was a socialist one, and it lasted from 47 to 48 or so, and then disappeared. So yeah, so this is Bafel Talabani's father, Jalal Talabani. Next to him, the guy with the almost a sweater there, the sweater and the sandals, is none other than, does anybody know? Anyone want to put in the chat who they think that could be? I'll wait and see if anybody... The picture actually is not in Iraq. The picture is in another country. And you can tell if you look closely. Anyone, any ideas? Any idea? No, not my dad. Not my dad. Not in Iran. Nope, not Jolani. Yes, it's in Syria. How do you know it's in Syria? Because the picture above his head is Bashar's father, Hafiz al-Assad. This picture is in Damascus. But the question, so we have Hafiz al-Assad up there on the wall, a picture. Yes, very good. Somebody got it. Nikolai, good work. That is Abdullah Öcalan, the founder and the leader and still leader of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. So look in this picture. This picture has simultaneously Hafiz al-Assad, Öcalan, and Talabani meeting because they were both left-wing Kurdish parties that were backed by Moscow, give or take. And both of them were in Damascus. Because Hafiz al-Assad gave Öcalan refuge there because Assad was also against Turkey, which was a NATO country. So it was also part of a proxy war between Syria and Turkey. Don't forget, Syria had irredentist claims to territory that Turkey had stolen after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. So this was part of their hybrid war against Turkey. It not only was irredentist claims, it was also a NATO power. And so in that way, it was the enemy. So this is very, very, very interesting because you get to see a little bit of the trajectory ideologically of the region. Now imagine at this picture's taking, the PKK had fought on the side of the Palestinians already and had martyrs. Many of you don't know. The PKK's training, their initial training for the first decade or so of their formation was done in coordination with Palestinian liberation groups, the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the DFLP, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and Abu Nidal's network, which was even more, you could say, militant Palestinian organization. So that's very interesting. And there's a lot of very interesting stories of PKK fighters also training alongside IRA members, Gaddafi's people, Sandinistas from Nicaragua. There were other internationals who came from all over the world. So, and of course, they fought on the battlefield. That's why many of you, like, we should always be careful of monolithic understandings. Within the Kurdish liberation struggle, there is a section of Kurds that are anti-Arab, but there's a section of Kurds that have fought and died for Palestinians. So there's a big separation. And so it's important to understand that history. There's a portion of Kurds who are pro-Russia, pro-China. There's a portion of Kurds who are pro-West. But it's not monolithic, because the Kurds themselves are not monolithic either. All these groups and perspectives and ideologies and ideas and tribes and religions and, you know, everything like that. So that's important to note. So what's interesting is Talabani would end up becoming president of Iraq after the invasion for a period of time. And his PUK, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, is still considered left-wing, more or less. It's really a centrist party now. And it has a very close relationship with Iran because it wants to maintain good ties, and also because historically, Iran and the PUK see eye to eye on anti-imperialist issues. Because if the PUK is left-wing and supporting Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua and South Africa and in the anti-apartheid struggle and all these things, Iran also was doing the same, right? That's what people don't understand. Iran was also struggling at the same time, supporting liberation in Angola, Namibia, South Africa, Western Sahara, in Latin America, all over. So it's very, very important to understand that and to really grasp the deeper points. Now, you saw from Talabani's talk, they don't want to get involved because they have two scenarios. Number one, they have the scenario where the Turks get involved, which they're already in Iraq. So that would be no good for them. And the second scenario is that Iran gets involved even more so and begins to destroy a lot of the things that they built up in Kurdistan regional government since the first Gulf War. So that's not very good for them. And they don't want that. I mean, you have the Talabani family and the PUK in Suleimania. You have the Barzani family in Erbil. So they don't want to jeopardize their balance of powers. Also, some Kurdish nationalists in the KRG in northern Iraq do not recognize Kurdish self-determination in the other three parts or four parts, depending on how you look at it, of so-called Kurdistan, right? They say, no, we're the only Kurdish separate area. There's a Kurdish region. There's a Kurdish state in Iran. It's called Kurdistan. It's a state with the name Kurdistan, but it's not an autonomous region. It's part of the federal Islamic Republic. And they say, no, we don't recognize anybody else's aspirations for nationhood, only our nationhood, only Kurdistan and regional government, only northern Iraq. So that's very interesting as well. All right. So we've gone through that. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to take us down on another interesting thing. So I want to bring this back up because I think it's very, very, very important for us to really understand and grasp it. All right. We're back. Right? So just look. Let me maximize this. Okay, there we go. Can everyone still hear me? I hope everyone can still hear me. Now I think I solved the problem. I just maximize this and I keep my volume on. So you can see on this map, the diversity, the enormous diversity of Iran, and especially the diversity in what we would call the frontier, the periphery of Iran. So the central part of Iran is mostly inhabited by the majority Persian ethnicity. And then the regional areas or the sort of provincial areas, the frontier areas have minorities. So you can see starting at the top here, right? You see here, for example, These are Azeris, right? So Azerbaijan historically, or the Azeri people had, they were all part of the Safavid and then later the Qajar dynasty. And then there was a war with Russia, and Russia took a lot of this territory in the Caucasus, and it went back and forth, and eventually the modern borders were created. So most Azeri people live in Iran. Azerbaijan is a state for Azeri people that was a creation later on of the Soviet Union. So there's a question about Azeri separatism. Although, fun fact, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei comes from an Azeri background as well. So that's very interesting to note. So Azeris in Iran are far more religious, even though all Azeris are mostly Shia, right? Azeris in Azerbaijan, in the country Azerbaijan, are more secular because of the history of the Soviet experience and the Russian Empire. In Iran, they are more religious and traditional. So that's very interesting to note. Then you look down here, and you see the Kurds, right? You see the Kurds, you have the big cities, Mahabad, Sanadaj, and Kermanshah. And Kermanshah is where my grandfather was born, and that's where he's from. So just in case you are wondering, since everybody always asks me where my family's from. So that's where my grandfather's from. So if you look and you see in this area here, so you have in this region, you have Lurs, right? So my grandmother is Lur. So she's from this region. She's actually from this border region here in Hamadan. She's from Malayer, that area where my father was born. So the question then becomes, wait a minute, Kurds don't actually have that much territory in Iran, like the maps that we're seeing. They have this territory here, and then also in the eastern part of the country, due to historical reasons, there's also Kurds there. So now you wonder, well, wait a minute, the map of Kurdistan that we see is enormous, and for some odd reason, they include the territory of the Lurs. Well, that's an interesting question, and that's an interesting topic, because for some Kurdish scholars, Lurs are not Kurds. For some other Kurdish scholars, Lurs are Kurds. It depends who you ask, and academia has not reached a consensus about it. There are people who are proud to be Lurs and don't identify with the broader Kurdish family, and there are Lurs who see themselves as Kurds. Because I'm half and half, it's easy. We're all the same basically anyway. We're just mountain people, mountain Iranic peoples. So it's just interesting because of the language differences and also the religious differences. As you can see there, Lurs are Shia. Why Bakhtiari are not mentioned? Very interesting point somebody mentioned here. Bakhtiari technically are a Lur, are part of the Lur family. That's how they're looked at in terms of academia. But there are some who put Bakhtiari separately. So it depends on who you ask and depends on the scholar. There are some very famous Kurdish scholars in the West who debate this topic. But they're there. Bakhtiaris are there, and other tribal groups within the Lur family. There are also tribal groups within the Kurdish family. So you can see the difference. Lurs are Shia. A lot of the Kurds are Sunni, and then you have some overlap of Shia Kurds in Kermanshah. You also have other, yes, Lurs and Kurds have some equivalency historically. Some people say about 1,000 years ago. They ended up diverging in terms of how you would categorize them. But in any case, that's what the academia says on it. Okay, so with that, I want to go through, because I think that this is very, very, very important. I want to go through and talk to you all about, let's see if, do I come back on here? Oh, hold on. Whoops. Still getting acquainted here. Here we are. Now I'm back. I want to go through with you all and share the next screen, which is very interesting for us. Okay. Can all of you see this screen? So when you search for Kurdish map, you then get a variety of different maps. You don't get one standard map of Kurdistan. And that's because there is no standard map of Kurdistan. There is no general consensus about the borders of Kurdistan, about who constitutes a Kurd, about the overall historical territory, not to mention the current territory of where Kurds live. So this is very interesting, and it's a topic that I've worked on quite a bit. But you can clearly see the maps are all different. So you have a difference here. This one goes way farther. This one's a little bit more narrow here. And you can see even much fatter in this area here. You can see much skinnier here. And we're going to go take a look. Let's take a look here. So now we understand that there's some difference, and maps are very important for the building of nationalism. So let's take a look at a map. Let's take a look at a map from 1946. All right. So this is a map of Kurdistan from 1946. And what's interesting about this map is that it includes who? So this is a Kurdish map. But who does it include after you looked at the map of the ethnic minorities? You can tell, if you look at the map of the ethnic minorities of Iran, you can tell who's included in this Kurdistan. Anyone? Yes, Lurs. Exactly right. In this map from the 1940s, Lurs were included in that. And you can see them there, right? You can see this, I believe, this is not in English. It's in French, I believe. So if you look here, you see up here, right? These are the Zazas, the Zazaki people. That's also a language. They are in the Darsim area. They are Alevi, and they are very close with the Alawites in Syria. They have a similar trajectory within Shia Islam, but it's a big contentious debate, so I won't get into it, right? You see here, it goes to, hold on, let me see if I can zoom in a little easier. Here we go. You see here, Kurmanji, right? Kurmanjis. So one of the Kurdish languages is Kurmanji, right? You also have Sorani. And you can see here, for example, if you go down here, so you have Mahabad, right? This is the border. You have Mahabad. You go down here, you have Kermanshah. For example, right here, you see this city here? Let me zoom in here. So where are we? Here. So this is Hamadan province, right? So here are the Lurs. And somebody was asking about the Bakhtiyars. The Bakhtiyars are here, right? They are listed here. They are actually delineated on the map. This city right here, Malaye, it's actually Malayer. That's where my father was born. So for those who are interested, that's where my family comes from. So it's very, very interesting. It's a borderland. It's a borderland between Kurds, Lurs, and Persians. So it's very fascinating. And as you can see, this map of Greater Kurdistan goes all the way to, Bandar Dilam, goes all the way to the Persian Gulf, which is very important. Now you see there, Khuzestan. Khuzestan are the Arabs. That's where the Arabs of Iran live. And those are the Arabs, like in Ahvaz there. Actually, there's been some extensive bombing in Ahvaz and Abadan, which is where the oil is, a lot of like oil and refineries and things like that. So very, very important to look here. So you see how important maps are. Maps are critical. I feel sometimes like an Indiana Jones type character, but really maps tell us a story. And they tell us a story not only of the development of nationalisms, the development of identities, but also they tell us a story about how empires and different states looked at other parts of the world, right? So that's very important. Now let's look at a more modern map here. And let me go here. Let's see. Okay. So this is a map from the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? And as you can tell here, who's not included here? All of you are wise, my beloved students. All of you are good to go. I know it. Who can say it? Who can say it? I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting. You can see clearly it does not go all the way down. It does not go all the way down to the Caspian, and it doesn't go to the Mediterranean, right? It's the Lurs, exactly. The Lurs aren't included here. So in this depiction, and probably for Encyclopedia Britannica, the Lurs are not considered Kurds. They are considered separate. That might be just academia. It could also be by a much bigger British imperial understanding, colonial understanding of the various ethnic groups, and therefore the British foreign policy. Very interesting, in my opinion. But you can clearly see, here that there is no standard definition, there is no standard cartography, there is no standard border around who are Kurds, what is Kurdistan, what are the borders of Kurdistan. And that is very important because we right now are on the precipice of starting a sectarian war where people themselves have no clue about what's going on and who's involved and what the borders are and where we're going to take and where we're going to go. So that's very important to understand. All right. I hope that this provided, it's a cursory look, but I hope it provided some level of details about what's going on here and about generally the makeup. So let's look now at some of the Kurdish groups that are basically in charge of, or that are going to be responsible for this sort of incursion, this separatist movement, if it ends up happening, right? So we have here a total of 7 groups, right? So we have PJAK right here. So the first one, PJAK, PJAK, Kurdistan Free Life Party. They are the branch of the PKK in Iran. The Kurdish part of Iran is called Rojelat Kurdistan. So Rojelat, it means eastern. So it's the eastern part of Kurdistan. You have Bakur, Bashur, Rojelat, Rojava, right? So that's north, south, east, west, Kurdistan. So you see PJAK there. So PJAK is PKK. It has a very interesting and contentious relationship with the Iranian government, sometimes allies, sometimes not, depending on who you ask and what sort of reports you see. It's been quite interesting and a real development over history as to their ebbing and flowing and waning and waxing of their relationship, especially in anti-terrorist operations against Daesh and in operations against Turkey, because Iran and Turkey are major powers in the region, and they also sometimes fight each other through proxies historically. So the Kurds have also played a role in that. Then you have the Kurdistan Freedom Party, the PAK. You have Komala, which is left-wing. Hebat, Kurdistan Struggle Organization. Another Komala, a Komala CPI, which is the Communist Party of Iran one. You have Komala of the Toilers of Kurdistan. All of those are communist in origin, but they all have now slight differences with each other. And then you have the PDKI, the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan. That is the historic party. That's the historic party that has been around since the 1940s. And we can take a look here. All of you, of course, I'm sure can look on Google, but that's the one, Qazi Muhammad, who founded it in 1945, and it played a very important role in the Republic of Mahabad, and then it went into exile. It struggled in Iran for a period of time, and then it went into its militant wing went into exile in Iraq. So those are the groups that are currently involved and have united for some sort of liberation movement. And I want to now show. We can look at one of the websites here. Sorry, let me just, okay. So we can look here, for example, this is PJAK's website. So joint statement on the new wave of repression in Kurdistan. You can see all the parties there, right? So they're talking about what they are looking for, the political prisoners, the Kurdish, the national and Kurdish movements. So that was in July of 2025. And since then, there have been other articles here. And of course, you can find, because it's Pejak, there he is. There he is. Let's zoom in. Hold on. Where we go? There he is. Everybody knows who that is on the left, not the right. On the left, that's Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, because Pejak is the PKK branch in Iran. So very, very interesting to see here what the Pejak information space has. And of course, they have, and the flag behind it, by the way, is the KJK flag, the KCK flag, which is for the Kurdistan, the Union of Kurdistan Communities of Kurdistan. So, somebody asks a very important question. Are there any Islam-based Kurdish groups? Yes, there is Kurdish Hezbollah, right? So let me actually, we can take a look here. And I will show you this. Let me share my screen here. There it is. Kurdish Hezbollah is a Kurdish Shia Sunni Islamist militant organization active against Turkey and formerly against the Kurdistan Workers' Party due to clashes that occurred between 1992 and 1995. So very, very, very interesting there that you see here. There is also a Kurdistan Hezbollah, but it's not like the Hezbollah in Lebanon, because it doesn't follow a strict Shia understanding. It's much more about Kurdish Islamic Union and Kurdish nationalism, but with Islamic characteristics, you could say. So there you go. That's for you to have there. And also lots of Kurds in other, like especially in, I would actually put up here, for those of you who are interested in broader Kurdish struggles, I would have you look up, for example, let me show you. So the killing of this man was very historic in Kurdish history, actually in Shia history as well. It's actually a mix. So this is Sayyid Riza. Sayyid Riza is a Alavi Zaza, Alavi Kurd, who lived in the Darsim region of Turkey, and he was killed. He was executed by the Turkish state by hanging. And Sayyid Riza is very important because he was both struggling for autonomy, for like national liberation, but with Shia characteristics. So when he died, he specifically spoke about Karbala. And I believe actually there should be, hold on. Where does he say? He says it here. We are the sons of Karbala. We are blameless. It is shameful. It is cruel. It is murdered. He said, we are the sons of Karbala. That's why you cannot be so monolithic about Kurds, because a lot of Kurds in the PKK are from Darsim and from that area and have Alavi roots. So a lot of them felt a kinship and a close connection to Iran because of Shia Islam. And they felt a kinship to the Alawites in Syria when we were there. And they were against the US. They were against the US and the Zionist state. So we must understand that there's a lot of complexity here. And I like easy narratives, but in this case, it's not so easy. And I know because I was on the ground and I saw it firsthand. Okay. So let's now go. So we did that. Now I want to go here. I want to talk, as we conclude tonight, I want to talk about the Iranian resistance, sort of political establishment. Who's trying to come in? Who's trying to come in and sort of take power? Who's lined up, so to speak? That's the interesting question. So we have, first and foremost, as you all well know, we have the the crown prince, quote unquote. I call him the Epstein cuck prince. We have Reza Pahlavi, right? So Reza Pahlavi is the son of the deposed Shah, and he is living in the U.S. Since he basically left, since they left Egypt eventually, and he's been living in the U.S. since the 80s. And he is the one that is being groomed by a lot of people. A lot of people are grooming him for power. So that's very interesting. So you have Reza Pahlavi, and he has virtually no support in the country. Everyone remembers the period of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, his father, and it was not pleasant. We had a secret service called Savak that was actually, many of you will know this Goldi Gamari. Hold on, I'll show you. Hold on. Everybody stay put. I will show you this person, because then you will make sense of it. And now you can kind of understand. Hold on. Let me just pull this up real quick. It should... Media. Let's see. Let me see if I can pull this up. Images. Okay, we got it. Perfect. So, all of you know who this woman is, I'm sure, because she's being pushed heavily. So, this is Goldie, right? Oh, it's not working as well. Okay. Oh, this is Goldie. And she is holding there. Goldie. She is Goldie. She's holding there a flag. And that flag is the flag of Savak. That is the Secret Service flag of the imperial state. So she is an Epstein witch. I call her that. I call her an Epstein witch, Epstein demon, whatever it is. But she's holding the flag of Savak. And that's not a lion. That is the mythical creature. It's a hybrid. It's a man's head and wings and a lion's body. So kind of like a griffin type creature, but with a human face, human like torso area. So very interesting, very, very interesting to see that the monarchists are pushing. That's it. Lamasu. Thank you. Lamasu. Yes. I think that was it from, I have to go and brush up on my ancient history and archaeology. But they're very prominent in like Persepolis and in a lot of different archaeological sites. You will see those that symbolism, which is why the monarchy took them, because it tried to portray itself as hereditary from Cyrus the Great, which it was not. Reza Pahlavi, the grandfather of this crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, took power in a coup and actually had no hereditary claim. He just installed himself. And there are symbols. These are symbols similar that you find in Babylon, in Mesopotamia, in Sumer, in Assyria. So you have her. So you have her holding that. So it was not pleasant. You had this secret police. They were brutal. They were vicious. Even if you read anything, either Islamist or listened to tapes of Ayatollah Khomeini when he was in Iraq in exile or anything like that, you were severely punished and even possibly killed. So there were a lot of people who were tortured, killed, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was arrested by Savak and tortured. So just so everybody knows, he himself was a victim of torture at the hands of Savak. So we have Reza Pahlavi. So that's one faction, the monarchists. So the monarchists are trying to do their thing. They're trying to get power. And then who else do we have? Then we have another group. Let me open them up here. All right, perfect. Now we have the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And you might wonder, what the hell is the National Council of Resistance of Iran? This is a very interesting question. Maybe some people in the chat will know. Aha! Some people know. This is the Mujahideen Khalq, the PMOI, the People's Mujahideen of Iran, our Albanian friends, as you rightfully point out. And so their support is very interesting. So first and foremost, if we go back in time, we have, let me zoom out here. All right. So I think you might know one of those people. And then the other person is Rajavi, the founder. So Maryam Rajavi is the wife. And there you have a meeting with Saddam Hussein, because after the Iran, so Mujahideen Khalq, the PMOI, they participated in the Iranian Revolution, in the Islamic Revolution. Okay. After 1980, there became factionalism and fighting. And so eventually they rejected. I think Rajavi had a big cult of personality, and he really wanted to be the leader. But when the leadership went to they had the guardianship, the Velayat Faqih, they had all this new construction of what the Islamic Republic would look like. He was not a fan of it. And so eventually Mujahideen Khalq resorted to terrorism. They killed some very prominent individuals, including clerical leaders. And then it was full-on civil war between them and the government. So eventually, Mujahideen Khalq, the PMOI, found a refuge in Iraq because, as you know, right after the Islamic Revolution, the Iranian Revolution of 1979, the government of Saddam Hussein invaded. Seeing an opportunity to take territory, they invaded. I think they also killed some U.S. service members as well, because they were founded in 1960s, in mid-1960s, and they were active as an underground terrorist organization, resistance organization, some would say at that time, against the Shah and against the U.S. So, and they're a hybrid, by the way, just so you can understand. Now, no, but traditionally they're a hybrid between Islam and Marxism. So they're kind of a synthesis that Ali Shariati and others would bring about. So they leaned heavily into that. They leaned really heavily into that. Even their symbol had a hammer and sickle, as well as Islamic characteristics. So what ends up happening? So you end up having Saddam Hussein invade, and eventually the Mujahideen Khalq finds refuge in Iraq and start launching attacks with the Iraqi army from Iraq into Iran. At which point they are in Iraq, based in Iraq, until when? When do you think they're based in Iraq? When do you think their nice vacation ends in Iraq? Anyone want to take a guess in the chat? I'm waiting for you all. Don't worry. No rush. No rush. Let's see if anybody... Yes, 2003. Bingo! Good job, Casper Rialoff. I love it. So 2003 is when we have and this is interesting. The United States and Iran actually had some coordination. And the Shia groups in Iraq, once the Ba'ath regime fell, they went full on with some Iranian special forces groups to try to wipe out the Mujahideen Khalq. They did kill many members in the camps in Iraq, but others escaped and ended up going to Albania. And in Albania, they found refuge. Albania, of course, is not the Albania of Enver Hoxha, sadly. It is the Albania of gangsters, mafias, and the West. So, not to mention Albanian irredentism and Kosovo and all that. Kosovo is Serbia, by the way, in this channel, so everyone knows. So you have eventually what ends up happening. You have the Mujahideen Khalq goes to Albania, sets up shop, and now no longer participate. After 2003, they're not really involved in armed struggle necessarily anymore, although there are many attacks that happen inside Iran that are tied to the Mujahideen Khalq. But what you end up having is you have this new organization that rebrands itself. We like rebranding here, don't we? We like rebranding. And who do they rebrand themselves with? Oh, interesting array of characters. Interesting array of characters. Who's that guy with that mustache? It's not a good mustache, because we know in my family, we say we love the mustache because mustache means Stalin, power, Öcalan, all these kind of famous people, they have the mustache. But this guy has a mustache, but we don't like him. That's right. John Bolton, the walrus, John Bolton. So this is John Bolton, former national security advisor and very big Iran regime change hawk. Very big. Very, very big. And he is very close to the Mujahideen Khalq. Why? They pay him a fortune. I mean, a fortune for his support. So he supports them. And actually, he's not even happy. He's the only person out of this whole neocon regime change crew that's not happy with the situation. Also, you've seen some commentary by somebody else, who I'm going to show you right now. Let's see if I can find that picture here. Oh, it's the mayor. It's the mayor. Rudy Giuliani, with who's next to her on the other side? Anyone know who that other character is? He's dead now. I believe he's dead. I think he died. I'm pretty sure he did, if I'm not mistaken. Anyone know who is, if you're looking at the screen, that's right, Lieberman, Joseph Lieberman from Connecticut. So these are all people who are very close or were close to the Mujahideen Khalq. Very, very, very interesting for that array of people. Let's also look here. We have another one. Hold on. Oh, who's that? you know who. He's Ozempic now, by the way. He's not his fat self usually. He's definitely taken a lot of Ozempic to help slim down, as you can tell. Anyone know who that is? That's it, Pompeo. So that's Pompeo. He's also very close. So for those who don't know who the woman is, that's Maryam Rajavi, the wife of the leader, who, by the way, he's like, he disappeared and we don't really know, and sort of kind of like a mystery. He's dead, he's not dead, we don't know what happened. It's a very strange thing. Anyway, beyond that, and besides that, and then we have another person, very interesting. Hold on, let's see if I can find it here. Do we have it? Oh yes. Oh, who's that? Who's that? It's a blast from the past for those who know. Blast from the past for sure. Anyone know who that guy is? Mike Pence. That's right, former vice president under the first Trump administration. Look at the array of characters. Literally, the U.S. as a government is hedging its bets with multiple factions, choosing multiple resistance organizations and organizations in exile to see who actually is going to end up taking power. It's very interesting. I find it. And they're all fighting with each other, by the way, online. And yes, they are all losers. That's for sure. They are all losers. So everybody's fighting with each other online now. And it's absolutely hilarious. Really, really hilarious to see. So let's take a look. So we've got those people out of the way. So we've now gone through, I think we've done a good job for tonight. We've run the gamut. We've run the gamut on a lot of the sectarian issues and ethnic tensions, the questions, especially around Kurdistan and what Kurdistan means, both academically, and that includes maps, and also on the ground now. And we also looked at some of the Kurdish resistance organizations and the main resistance organizations in exile. So I hope that this gives you an opportunity to really reflect on, and this is only a cursory. I mean, I don't have time. I could go through, I could do, lectures after lectures, but this is a cursory understanding. I really want to just give you, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of get snippets here for you to do research on your own. All of us are capable of critical thinking. All of us are capable of deep research. So I want you all to be able to do some really good research. And I want to open it up now. I mean, part of my show is really classroom oriented. So I want to open up the show for questions. I mean, if you all have questions, If you want to go through things more in depth, I'm ready for them. If you want to throw a couple out, we have a little bit of time here. So let me know if you have any questions. Let's see. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the love for everyone. I really appreciate it. Make sure, if you have not already, subscribe to both YouTube channels, my YouTube channel and DD Geopolitics YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us on X and everything. Any questions? Do we have any questions in the chat? Anything anybody is interested in, wants to talk about? I'm here. I'm here. The UK is so here, these are very interesting. So 2 questions here that are coming, and actually a couple of interesting ones. So I'll take a couple of these here. So the first question is about the UK. So the UK, as we saw, the UK has the issue about Akrotiri in Cyprus, right? So after Cyprus became independent, part of its independence was to give the British a piece of Cyprus so that they could have basically a permanent British base. So they stole some of the territory of Cyprus to build a base that's considered sovereign British territory. Now, Akrotiri was hit by drones from Hezbollah, we think. That's what everybody's saying. So the UK has now deployed military assets to Cyprus to reinforce it and to the wider region. Although we don't know yet if the UK is going to commit. They have said it's not their war, but I think if attacks continue on Akrotiri, there will be a proportional responses by the UK to defend the base. So that's very important to understand and to note here. So that's where the UK is right now. There was actually a shit show interview with the defense minister. I don't know if I can find it now, but in any case, if you go to our Telegram channel or our YouTube, or sorry, our X, you can probably see it there. Another question that's very important is, will it be the Kurds or Baluchis, or both being lackeys to the imperialists? Now, I've seen some videos coming out of Balochistan, out of the Iranian Balochistan, which show a lot of Balochi tribes supporting the government. Even though they've had their issues, they are very, I would say, patriotic, but also very religious. And so they see the Zionist entity and the US in the same sort of terminology as the Islamic Republic does. So I've seen videos of them saying that they've pledged support to the Islamic Republic. So that's what I think. Listen, will there be some groups? I think so. There will be some groups that will take advantage. There'll be some violence, I think. We will see clashes. We will see gunfights. Will it be nationwide? Not at this point. There's no indication at this point that there will be a nationwide fracturing and civil war. Now, if this bombing goes on for 3-4 years, that's a completely different story. But at this point, there is no sign that this is going to lead in that direction on a full-fledged civil war or a full-fledged sectarian uprising. So Israel's hitting water plants, right? There's a question about the desalination plants. That Iran has also said that they are legitimate targets as well if Israel and the United States continue to hit Iran's. So prepare, because majority of water that goes to the Zionists comes from desalination plants. So that's very important. I want everyone to understand that that is existential for them. They've stolen the water from the occupied territories, but for them, desalination is very important, very critical. It's complete. It's part of national security for them, because they have to clean water and make fresh water from salt water from the Mediterranean. That's very important. So if Iran were to hit some of those, that could create an epic crisis in the Zionist state. It would also be considered it's considered a violation of armed conflict. It could be considered a war crime too. But all bets are off. Who's following international law now? Who's being held accountable for anything under international law? It's even to think about that is crazy at this point, because nobody has been held accountable for the genocide in Gaza. Nobody has been held accountable for multiple assassinations of leaders, kidnappings of presidents. I mean, you're seeing everything happening. So I don't suspect that that's going to happen at this point. Has Iran recognized the KRI similar to how Iraq has? You mean the Kurdistan region of Iran? No, it's completely different. Kurdistan in Iran is a state, is like a state designation, like a state in the US, but it's part of the Islamic Republic. It just has the name Kurdistan. In Iraq, it's like a self-governing entity. It has its own military, it's integrated, but it has its own structures and bureaucracy that is connected to Baghdad, but also much more autonomous. So they're not the same. They're actually quite different. How are the Kurds close to Turkmenistan? Very interesting. There's historical reasons for that. There were travels. There were groups of Kurds that traveled to the region and ended up setting up shop there, especially because of the border areas there, sort of the frontier trading, and also holy sites in the region. So that's very interesting. So there's a long-standing, for centuries, Kurdish population that lives in the far east, the far northeast of Iran, which is very interesting, I think. So thank you all again. Really appreciate it. I see. Do you think Red Kurdistan, the Eagle's Nest, was abandoned due to its strategic importance rather than a slight against the Kurds? Red Kurdistan is all but, it doesn't really exist anymore. Besides some Kurds that live in the area, some Yazidis that still live in Armenia, Azerbaijan area. No, it's not really even considered part of Kurdistan anymore. Some nationalists will have it on the map because of historic reasons, but there's really no Kurdish population there now that would in any way grant them the right to have that territory. It's like the Black Belt thesis in the US. Most African Americans don't live in the Black Belt anymore. They live on the East Coast. They live in the Northeast. They live in the Midwest, in the sort of old industrial belt around the Great Lakes, and now on the West Coast. So there's no reason to then say separatism because of some historical demography. It changed completely. So in any case, here. Let's see. So many questions now. I'll get to. Let me see a few more here. Let me see. Let's see. Where did I go? Here. What happened to the National Front? Good question. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the National Front. We should look into that and investigate that as well. Let's see. How much control do regional commanders have now, really? Regional commanders, under the decentralized model in Iran, regional commanders have much more authority now if there's no central command. And as long as they follow through on the sort of revolutionary principles and maintaining security and territorial integrity, they have pretty much effective command and control. So that's one of the unique aspects of this decentralized model that's been created since the 1980s, which is very interesting. Oh, I won't comment on the origin of Albanians in the Balkans. We'll be here all day. But I think that's all for tonight. I really appreciate you all. Let's go through. I had some. There's an interesting, also interesting point. When will the Yemenis get in the fight? People have asked. So they have done some things, and they have said that they are going to target ships in the Red Sea. But at this point, I think my hunch, my educated guess, is that the Yemenis are preparing for a reduction of air defense capabilities. And if asked by Iran, I think they will get in the fight and also launch their ballistic missiles. But it remains to be seen. I think that the important part is that they maintain command and control over the Red Sea, which is an important route for ships, including U.S. military ships. That's where I think the U.S. Or the Yemenis are going to have an impact on the U.S. Overall. So let's take a look. First and foremost, real big thank you, Joseph D23. Thank you so much for the $5. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much to Kasper Rielov for becoming a YouTube member. We really appreciate that. Dragas here, Yasu Christara, Thermus Hertismus Aptinalada, Hertismus Aptimoska, Kefiliakia, Naste Kala. We have here the Helali Horde. I appreciate it. And thank you again for everyone for your well wishes for my health and well-being. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this show being a great place for us to come together. Please spread the word. Please share as far as you can. I'd like to have a good following and for us to have a good crew here. And I want you all to always know that you can always reach out to me. You can always ask me questions if you need. I don't always reply on time, but I will try to always reply when I can. lots of love to everyone. Wishing you all a wonderful evening or day wherever you are. And thanks again for making this first stream so wonderful. 5,100 people tuned in. So thanks again. Thanks again to everyone. Stay safe, stay well. Let's defeat the Epstein world order. Let's build a better world together. And let's continue to learn from one another. Yasas, Kalinichta, Khodafez, to all of the Persian speakers. And we will see you very, very soon.